All right, folks, welcome back to the New Sentinel. Today, this topic, man, it's wild. We're diving into China's artificial pregnancy robot. And if you haven't heard, this thing is straight out of sci-fi. Duke, remember when we covered the chip wars and were joking about robot overlords? Now it's robot mothers. Kaiwa Technology unveiled this human-sized robot with an artificial womb designed to bring a baby to term. We're talking artificial amniotic fluid, nutrient tubes, all inside a robot belly. It blew my mind, honestly.
Yeah, Chuck, it's wild, all right. Straight to the mission details. China built this thing because they're staring down a baby bust, crashing birth rates, infertility's up almost 20%, and surrogacy's banned over there. Can't say I'm shocked they're throwing tech at the problem, but man, a robot pregnant for 9 months? That's a whole new AO. And it's not just science. They're hard-selling this as some demographic lifeline.
I don't want to get too tactical right out of the gate, but this robot's not just tech for novelty's sake. China's got strategic aims, national pride, sure, but they're solving a logistical issue. Surrogacy's illegal, adoption's heavily regulated, so if you want a population bump without the legal headaches, you build a workaround. That's classic statecraft, honestly. I gotta say, though, the engineering, they're trying to simulate everything. Baby gets nutrients through a tube, floats in fluid, just like in a real womb, but it all happens outside the human body. The full cycle, conception to delivery.
Ethan, I think it's important to pick up on what you said about bypassing the legal headaches. This robot is more than policy. It's a direct response to gender, social, and even ethical norms. Chinese culture, just like Russian or American, traditionally attaches such strong meaning to motherhood, to the act of carrying a child. Now, it's an algorithm and a machine. It can be liberating or alienating. I'm not so sure yet.
You know, Olga, that's what hits for me too. I grew up in Nigeria, right? Motherhood is sacred. It's almost spiritual both there and in the States, even if the rituals are different. Technology for us is a tool, but when it shifts social roles this much, it stirs up the village, if you get me. In the West, we've got surrogacy and IVF, and we like to say we're modern, advanced. But this, robots holding babies, forces everybody to question the basics. Even food for thought. How much of motherhood is about biology versus nurture, eh? It's a big one.
Well, and don't forget, this is all running on top of biobag research from back in 2017. Those lambs they kept alive in artificial wombs in Philly. Ka Technology's just pushing the whole thing into the market, making it actual, not just a hospital trick for sick preemies. It's revolutionary, but are we ready?
That's the fundamental question, Duke. Ready or not, here comes the future, and it doesn't always ask permission.
All right, y'all, as the resident by-the-book guy, let's talk about the legal minefield. Start with the basics. If a robot carries a baby, who's the legal mother? Is it whoever donated the egg, the person who bought the robot, or the programmer back at Kaiwa HQ? The Chinese are actively drafting new laws around this in Guangdong, but globally, we're staring at a policy vacuum. It's a classic law lags behind tech scenario, worse than anything we've seen with surrogacy before. And by the way, we've seen some real messes with that in the U.S.
Graves, you remind me of reporting in Moscow when our lawmakers panicked over cross-border surrogacy. Suddenly, babies were stateless, parents caught in endless legal disputes. That's nothing compared to this. What citizenship does a child have if gestated by a robot in Beijing with parents from, say, Germany? We aren't just talking about loopholes, we're talking about children who may not belong anywhere, and governments clutching at outdated definitions of family. International bodies like UNICEF or the UN, they're only just starting to sketch new frameworks, decades behind.
Exactly. And let's not downplay the ethics. People are asking, what about maternal bonding? No late-night kicks, no hormonal swings, no skin-to-skin. I know I keep banging on about the basics, but even in the States, with all our tech, folks worry about the psychological side. That bond between mother and child, it's powerful. Keen to hear your take, though, Duke, on the surrogacy angle. Will this just become a hack for folks trying to dodge legal limits?
Absolutely, Chuck. Look, we got black market surrogacy already. This robot hits the AO and suddenly it's a legal smoke grenade. Everybody runs it different. You get a loophole wars scenario. Some countries crack down, others open up, same as we saw with medical tourism or even crypto back in the day. But the US, we got messy state-by-state surrogacy laws. China? Top-down, quick regulation. If history tells us anything, it's that the law and the market will play chicken until something tragic happens, and then they start drawing borders.
Yeah, Duke, your point makes sense. I dug into prior U.S. surrogacy cases. The Baby M case in the 80s, New Jersey. Total chaos. Contract voided, kid caught in the crossfire, law scrambling to catch up. But the difference here is, with the robot, human involvement's even thinner. China can regulate at the national level, but in the West, there'll be patchwork, just like with privacy or medical rights. I hate to say it, but we might see international legal standoffs over these robo-born kids. The world isn't ready for this. Not legally, and definitely not ethically.
And we cannot brush past the social cost. What happens to children, especially those born in legal limbo? And what about women whose traditional roles are being erased, outsourced, commodified? We have not begun to answer the basic questions about the rights of these children or the rights of the people most affected by this shift. Legislators will be tripping over themselves for years trying to catch up. And every gap will come back as a human story, a child without status, a woman replaced by a circuit board. This is why I followed women's rights protests in Moscow last year, when news spread that artificial womb robots were real, not just movie props anymore. The outrage was electric. Motherhood is not an accessory. That was their slogan. For many, this felt like the final frontier in eroding women's value. First it was IVF, then surrogacy, now it's a machine. But of course, the story's bigger. It's not just how we make babies, it's who gets to make babies, and with what features.
Yep. And you can see it already. AI-driven embryo selection, designer genetics, hooking right into this robotic gestation pipeline, commodifying life. I mean, are we going to have catalogs for picking out your new son or daughter's height, eye color, athletic ability, all algorithm optimized? Sounds like a Black Mirror episode, but it's closer than we think. And you know, privilege always finds a way. Who gets access to this tech first? Who shapes the next generation, literally?
And if you ask me, we're setting ourselves up for a two-tier system, robo-born versus bio-born. Watch, it'll breed new kinds of identity politics. Back in the army, you look left and right, and what bonds you isn't who carried you, but who you are next to in the trench. But in Civvy Street, people already fight about natural parenting versus formula versus C-section. Now throw robot babies in? Yeah. Social flashpoints everywhere. Folks will treat these kids just like they do now with anything weird. Suspicion, stigma, maybe even outright discrimination.
And don't forget the history, folks. We've seen how eugenics, real bad stuff, happens when you mix science, authority, and a sense of progress with too little oversight. This could go down a real dark path. But you know, it's not all bad. Could help high-risk cases, prevent genetic disease. It's a tool, depending who wields it. The question is, will society ever be ready for designer genetics, robo-moms, and all the identity chaos that follows?
Ready or not, it's coming. Women in Moscow, parents in Beijing, politicians in Washington, we're all going to have to grapple with a world where the basics of humanity are up for engineering. For every person it liberates, there's another who feels erased. And that tension isn't going away anytime soon.
That's a good place to pause. There's a lot we didn't cover, like insurance, education, and religion's take. But for now, that's all for today's episode of The New Sentinel. Olga, Ethan, Duke, always sharp. Listeners, thanks for being with us. We'll be back soon, diving even deeper into how emerging tech is rewriting the rules of life. Everyone, want to sign off?
Absolutely. This one's going to leave the chessboard messy for a while. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care, everyone. Keep your humanity close.
Stay on target, folks. We'll catch y'all next round. Out.
All right, goodbye from all of us at the New Sentinel.